Well, it is the 23rd day of December 2016, just 2 days to Christmas. And of course, here on KTN News, we are taking a look at how the hustle as we rush into the very important day gets here. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the KTN News. My name is Akisa Ondera. Sign language interpreter is Lensa Owino. Let's take a look at the highlights. What next after the passage of electoral laws amendments? The Jubilee and CORD set for a clash outside Parliament. Pharmacy Board now threatens to stop supply of medicine to force a quick solution to the ongoing doctor strike. And transport crisis as thousands throng bus termini to rush up country for Christmas. Good afternoon. We start off with an update on the situation with the doctors' strike. The Pharmaceutical Association of Kenya is calling on President Uhuru Kenyatta to personally interfere to end the doctors' strike. Led by its president, Dr. Paul Moniki, the society says they will stop supplying pharmaceutical products if the strike is not resolved by the 3rd of January, which is just a few days from now. Now, Moniki has accused the president and his government of being insensitive to the plight of doctors and Kenyans suffering as a result of the strike.
There should be procedures on recruitment, promotion, transfer, resignation, and termination. There should be policies on training, internship, career development, research, better working conditions for doctors in the public sector, including namely having facilities that are well equipped with drugs and medical supplies. Housing, transport, security for doctors, call room, enough support staff, work within hours mandated by law, and compensation for overtime, staff housing, and assured transport security for doctors on call. All those are things to ensure these health workers, the doctors, when you put them there, that they have the necessary capacity, including commodities and support staff, to be able to perform their functions, including equipment. There should be employee benefits, health insurance, retirement benefit, mortgage, car loan. What we are saying is that the president of this country so far has not said anything significant about this strike. In my own opinion, I think the people who are advising the president, they are misleading him. They are telling him that things are okay, that the patients maybe who are always seen in Kenyatta National Hospital, all the other public facilities, sharing beds, very sick, being attended to doctors when they are at work, that those patients, they are most probably at home enjoying nyama choma, enjoying drinks, and that everything is okay. In my own opinion, that is misleading the head of state, and if the head of state should consult even people like us, we give them the reality of what is happening. People are dying at home, people are dying in large numbers. Mothers who are supposed to deliver in hospitals, they are delivering at home. And if any complaint which arise, which sometimes 60% arise, the only people who are allowed to do cesarean surgery to actually help those mothers and save them from the death are the doctors who are on strike. There are people who are out there and they are supposed to go to the hospitals to pick their drugs for TB, to pick their drugs for HIV, after even other tests. Today, the people who are supposed to be consuming anti-TB drugs, they are not getting that supply. That means we have a risk of getting drug-resistant TB or multi-drug-resistant TB due to this kind of shortcomings, and this is a great health risk to this country. Patients who are supposed to be on ARVs, they are not supposed to miss even a single day on the supply of those products. The ARVs are distributed free of charge in public facilities. Private facilities don't distribute ARVs. So the thousands of people who are supposed to be on ARV and they're supposed to be collecting them regularly from public facilities, right now they are not taking them because they don't have those drugs.
All right, let's now speak to our reporter, Mark Namaswa, who now joins us from our city center studios with an update of what exactly this particular decision by the pharmaceutical board would mean for the doctors' strike. A very good afternoon to you, Mark. Looking at the situation, the strike is almost entering its third week now. What will this mean for patients in all public hospitals if the pharmacists make good their threat?
Akisa, this is part of what can be interpreted as a momentum-building process within the medical fraternity. Remember yesterday we had doctors from private hospitals announcing that they are officially joining the strike, which began yesterday with them starting to strike every Thursday of the week until this stalemate is resolved. But now the entry of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya means that the momentum building process within the medical fraternity to force the government into giving in to their demands, or at least addressing some of their grievances, seems to be coming up. And this is an interpretation of the situation getting worse, especially in terms of attendance to patients and medical dispensation of drugs across the country. Akisa.
Now, looking at the situation currently, and of course, as you mentioned, private doctors, consultants, and now pharmacists have joined in this particular call for the government to give in to the demands of the doctors. Are we likely to get any communication from the Ministry of Health?
What has been happening, if we look back at the trends that have been happening over the past 19 days of the strike, is that whenever medical practitioners hold a demonstration or call the government to action, we are usually called at around 6 p.m. going to 7 p.m. by government officials who will be answering back what medical practitioners have said. But we expect them to say something. Remember today, the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, Paul, called out to the president to make a decisive statement concerning the stalemate in the medical industry. He called on the president to say something substantial, and he said the president was probably not very serious about the entire issue. But if we start to count what the implication of the entry of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya is to the entire strike issue, is that apart from pharmacists being part of KMPDU that has been at the forefront of the strike conducted by doctors, we see the entry of the Pharmaceutical Society also bringing in other players in the medical supplies chain. For instance, manufacturers, importers, and suppliers of drugs, and also dispensers across the country are members of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. And with the institution calling their members to officially begin striking or not rendering their services to the public starting from January next year, it means that the entire industry, both the pharmaceutical industry and also the healthcare service delivery industry, might be paralyzed if this stalemate is not resolved in good time. Akisa.
Well, it's definitely going to be a very difficult January if the stalemate in the doctor's strike is not resolved, as Mark Namaswa tells us. Is joining us from our city center studios. Thank you very much, Mark. Now, members of parliament affiliated to Jubilee Party are currently holding a press conference to react to yesterday's dramatic passage of amendments to electoral laws. And joining us live from Jubilee headquarters here in Nairobi is our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo. A very good afternoon to you, Patrick. What exactly is happening at the headquarters currently?
Thank you, Akisa. Indeed, we've been invited, the media has been invited for a briefing on electoral laws, which were passed yesterday by majority Jubilee members after the code allied MPs or the opposition walked out of the debating chambers, citing intimidation and also maybe threats. They alleged that there were people were allowed inside with armed with guns, so they said they felt their lives was in danger. That's why they walked out of the plenary. plenary, and the Jubilee MPs went ahead and passed those acrimonious election laws in a record 30 minutes. But after that, after the laws were passed, we saw the opposition leadership react and say that they called for mass action on January 4th. And also we saw the Catholic Peace and Justice Commission also condemned the way the debate was carried out in the House yesterday, and they did prevail upon the President not to assent to those laws. We saw the Central Organization of Trade Union, COTU, Secretary General Francis Atwoli also condemned the way the laws were hurriedly passed in the House, and also said, urged the President not to append his signature to the laws. We've also seen they are calling, the IEBC also came up with a reaction and said they are not happy with the manner the matter has been treated, and they are asking for a bipartisan approach to ensure that these election laws do not cause acrimony in the country. Remember, these laws were agreed upon through a joint electoral committee which composed of 7 members of parliament from the opposition and 7 members from the ruling Jubilee side, both in the National Assembly and Senate. And in September, when the members were passing these laws, they were asked by the top leadership not to delete a full stop or introduce even a comma into those laws, because they were as a result of a negotiated process. And that's what members went ahead and do. And that was on 1st September, and by 14th September, the President assented to the laws, and it became an act. So they are questioning why maybe about 2 months later, even before the laws are operationalized, there are now changes. So there's a lot of suspicion among the political divide on these particular laws, and they've seen since raised political temperature. So we don't know really what the Secretariat will be talking about these election laws, whether they'll be reacting to the passage, or maybe whether they'll be having any other alternative idea on how it's supposed to be done. Because even these laws in September, when they were being passed, remember the Senate was the first house that sat and did pass the laws without making any amendments to it. And when it came to the National Assembly, members of the National Assembly were very eager to make changes, but the Speaker then, Justin Muturi, told members that they cannot go against the grain and insert, make changes to the law when the Senate, the counterparts in the Senate had passed the laws without making any changes. And that was the deal that was agreed then. So this time round, we've seen only the National Assembly, one side of the National Assembly, come to pass the laws, and we are yet to know whether the Senate will also have an opportunity to make an input. But maybe going by the tradition in the past, we've had supremacy battles between the National Assembly and the Senate, where at times the National Assembly regards itself as a superior house, and they've gone ahead to pass laws that even required an input from the Senate. But we've seen that they've skipped the Senate. In fact, that has been, on occasion, we've had also the Senate complaining, and they've said that they were citing about 40 laws that were passed without their input. So it's a matter that is yet to be settled, or is yet to be clarified, but we are waiting to see what the Secretariat will have to say about the events that happened in the House yesterday when Jubilee MPs passed the laws, because it's really attracted at least a lot of also condemnation or some concern in other quarters of society. Akisa?
Well, Patrick, there's word that the Senate might also have a sitting to discuss this very contentious electoral amendment laws. Have you had anything towards that effect?
That's what I'm saying, that in the initial September deal, when these electoral laws were discussed, the Senate was also invited. And when the Joint Select Committee was composed of members from both the Senate and National Assembly, it's a law that is affecting the county governments, and they have to have an input from both the Senate and National Assembly. And you see, when the National Assembly did pass, the Speaker of the Senate has not indicated whether we'll be having, the Senate will be sitting or not. So until and unless that communication is made, then that's when we'll know that maybe the Senate is sitting. But as I said, maybe there's a past tradition where the Senate has been skipped. So it is a wait and see as it stands now. But as I'm talking, I think the Secretariat is about to start briefing us on the issue, and I think I would rather say maybe I stop it at now so that we go set up for them and see what they are going to tell us.
All right, Patrick, thank you very much for that. And as he says, they're definitely setting up for that briefing. We will be going there live in a bit once it starts, just get an understanding of what exactly the Jubilee Secretariat has to say about the electoral laws, the very contentious amendments of the electoral laws. Now, the Christmas season is here, and the rush often experienced at various transport termini has uncharacteristically, decreased, with less passengers boarding vehicles to travel upcountry. Now, a spot check here in Nairobi's largest bus terminal, the Country Bus Station, revealed that very few people were traveling with transport operators, saying that this year fewer number of passengers have been recorded compared to the same time last year. Fare prices have, however, gone up despite the low numbers, but apparently it's not only transport that has been affected this year. Traders at the same station insist that business has been rather slow, with the shooting prices of commodities acting as a deterrent for potential buyers.
Hapa Country Bus tumekosa gari. Bei pia imepandishwa. Hatujui tukifika Kisumu tutaenda namna gani nyumbani. Sababu pesa hakuna, bei ni juu. Tutafanya namna gani hii maisha tunaelekea?
Upande wa usafiri tukilinganisha na mwaka jana, usafiri uko chini kabisa. We don't know why. Kiangalia upande kama gari kama hii Makamasa iko na masaa mawili tangu ingia hapa kwa kiwanja. Bado ni wakati wa rush. Abiria wapatikani kwa haraka. Shida hii ni gani? Tukiangalia upande wa shule zafunguliwa mapema. Bado hiyo nana hiyo kama ni hiyo ni effect. Tarehe 2, tarehe 3 shule sifunguliwe. Je, karo zatoka wapi? Usafiri pia una affect pia. 500 kwenda mpaka Mwingi. Enyewe pesa iko juu, but inabidi magari sipandishe bei at least kidogo tupate hela za kusomesha watoto wetu.
Kama mimi niko na mtoto alifanya 8. Niko na wengine wale wanaendelea. Sasa ile hali ya kuweka wanafunzi waende shule tarehe 1, yani tarehe 9, tuseme mwezi moja. Hiyo kwanza imechangia sana, na nikiangalia hata vile watu wanaenda nyumbani sio zaza, iko chini sana kuliko last year.
All right, let's now take a short commercial break, but don't go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN Newsdesk.
This is KTN News.
They are the heart of Kenya's devolved structure. And every year, billions of shillings leave Nairobi to go down to the counties. But are 47 governments spending your money on what you really need? KTN News is on a mission to ask questions. Just how is your money being used? And is there anything to show for it? 47 days of accountability, only on KTN News, where you get the whole story.
This is KTN News.
This land belongs to us.
We are operating on a 0.7 acre, and that is where we are to play. We are to learn.
Where will we play? What will we do? In class, you just shiver.
I don't have any place to go. That's why I'm fighting for the school and myself.
158 of those schools, their land grabbed by scrupulous people.
Welcome back. You are watching KTN Newsdesk. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's go straight here in Nairobi to Pangani, the headquarters of the Jubilee Party, where members of parliament affiliated to that particular party are reacting to the controversial electoral amendment rules or law. And currently speaking is the head of the Jubilee Party Secretariat, Raphael Tuju. Let's cross over there and listen in.
I want to invite all of you to go and Google. And you'll find that when they were in those countries, when the system was used in those countries, there were failures. Indeed, in Nigeria, the incumbent former President Goodluck Jonathan, the system could not recognize his fingerprint for 50 minutes. Now, you can imagine if we have a system and there's no backup, and some of these candidates who know how to scream at the top of their voices go to a polling station and the system does not recognize their names. Some of the candidates, you know them. What do you think will happen from minute 1 or hour 1 or hour 2 when we start the voting process? In a country like Ghana, it failed in 2 whole constituencies and they had to redo them. I want to ask you and Kenyans, let's not talk about failure in 2 constituencies. Let's talk about failure of the system in Kibera. I don't want to speculate what would happen if it fails in Kibera in Nairobi. But let Kenyans imagine what will happen if the biometric system, for one reason or another, is not working in the Kibera area of Nairobi. So unless somebody or some people are specifically leading us down the garden path so that they'll have a basis to dispute the 2017 elections, I see no other reason. Unless that is what somebody is trying to do, then we should proceed into the next elections without a backup system which is not dependent on the electronic system, and let us stop wasting anybody's time that we want to go for election. Let us start negotiating a nusu mkati arrangement, because that is all it can be. I want to be able to also remind you and remind all Kenyans that the Constitution of this country guarantees the right of any Kenyan, all Kenyans, to demonstrate and to picket. That is ingrained in our Constitution. So that anybody who says that they want to demonstrate from 4th of January or any other day, that's their right. It's your right, it's my right. But they should also remember that that right to demonstrate stops at the point at which it contravenes my right to free movement, it contravenes my right to go to work and hustle and get school fees for my children, it contravenes my right to take my children to school, it contravenes my right to go into the central business district. If anybody contravenes those rights, my right to free movement, my right to go to school, my right to go to work, then the same Constitution guarantees me my right of movement. The Constitution guarantees me the right to go into the central business district without being threatened by goons. That is our position, and is a position we are ready to defend. I think I can leave it there. Most of this is, didn't want to read it. Most of this is in the press release. And if you have any questions on this particular issue, I'll be more than delighted to answer. Wow, no questions. Let's go for a cup of tea.
I've seen the Catholic Church come up very concerned because they were part of the people who negotiated these particular election laws when they were passed without any formal change in September, and ascended to by September 2014. September 14. Now, the church has raised concern and they say they need to have at least a bipartisan approach. Maybe the members of the Joint Select Committee come on board and see how they can go about this particular issue. Instead of maybe what we saw in the House and National Assembly that is now increasing political tension in the country just 7 months to the election. Can we go, do you think it's possible we go the joint way as the church is suggesting? The same way also IBC has come on board and said, okay, let's look at a bipartisan approach or towards this particular issue so that we don't raise political temperatures across the country.
Fantastic. I agree with the church on this particular matter. And I think Kenyans should listen to this very carefully. There was a bipartisan negotiation. But the bipartisan negotiation was in good faith. Unfortunately, let us accept that as the negotiation was going on, there were no technical people who knew about the technology of biometrics, so that they could inform them that up to this point, you can go. I mean, they needed some IT people to be able to inform that particular aspect of the discussion. And I think all Kenyans should accept that that was an omission. It's like you're using the cameras, and I'm having a discussion that we will cover this particular function with a camera. But then we've forgotten that that camera will not work in darkness. You need lights. And this function is supposed to be at night. If you are there as a camera person who is a technical person, you'll be able to tell them that, look, you need camera, you need light, and since this is going to be at night, you must have lights for us to be able to capture the picture. I'm trying to break it down in realistic terms. So the truth of the matter is that whatever was negotiated, whatever was discussed, did not factor in the challenges that are inherent in that technology. I can't blame them because they're not technical people. They should take part of the blame for not having contacted technical people when they were putting something for legislation which requires technical moderation or information from technical people. Now, the Article 83, Part 3 of the Constitution says very clearly that the right of Kenyans to vote must not be reduced by any legislative procedure or administrative action of IEBC. So that legislation, to the extent that it goes to undermine the right of a person who is in a wheelchair. You know, when you're in a wheelchair, you use a lot of unless you wear gloves, your fingerprints are going to wear out. Those are a lot of people who work in farms. Sometimes, or very often, their fingerprints are so worn out that there may be problems. But the Constitution protects even that person, that you may not deny them the right to vote. Any legislative matter or any administrative matter which has been put in place to administer the election process must not compromise our right to be able to vote. In fact, if anything, the Constitution says it should facilitate, enhance, improve, not reduce. To that extent, this particular law was unconstitutional. And if you look at the 2013 Supreme Court ruling, it is in concurrence with that particular constitutional provision. Now, why don't people just sit down and debate? When one part of the government, because as far as I'm concerned, both the opposition and the side of Jubilee, they're all in government. They all drive those vehicles, which are government vehicles, a lot of them. They all have security, who are paid by the taxpayers. They all earn money from government.
All right, and that is Jubilee.